In the wide, open skies of Kansas, where the wind whispers through the cornfields, lived a man named Captain Elias Ace Thorne. To the people in the town of Willow Creek, he was just a washed-up pilot who spent his days cleaning oil leaks in a rusty old hangar. They saw a man who walked with a limp and sat in silence watching the clouds. The local youngsters mocked him, calling him Ground-Bound Elias, a man who was afraid to fly. 15 years ago, Elias was a legend, a senior captain for a major airline, until a terrifying mechanical failure at 30,000 feet forced him to make a choice that the manual said was impossible. He saved 300 lives, but the airline used him as a scapegoat to cover up their own maintenance failures. They took his wings, they took his pension, and they left him with nothing but the dust of a forgotten airfield. But today, a massive aerospace corporation is here to bulldoze the hangar and build a drone factory. But just as the first brick is about to fall, a supersonic roar tears through the sky. A man steps out of a military jet that wasn't supposed to exist. He isn't here to buy the land. He's here to show the world that while the airline took Elias's license, they could never take his legacy. The story goes back to a freezing night in 2011. Flight 402 was cruising at 30,000 feet when both engines suddenly went silent. A massive bird strike had turned a modern jet into a 60-ton glider. The cockpit was filled with the screaming of alarms and the scent of ozone. The co-pilot panicked, but Elias Thorne remained as calm as the eye of a storm. The air traffic controllers told him to ditch the plane in the Missouri River, but Elias knew the water was too cold. No one would survive the rescue. Instead, he saw a tiny, unlit landing strip in the middle of a Kansas farm. The manuals said the runway was too short. The computers said they wouldn't make it, but Elias felt the wings in his soul. He performed a dead-stick landing, bringing the plane down in total darkness. Every single passenger walked away without a scratch. But because Elias had disobeyed direct orders from the tower, the airline's lawyers used it as an excuse to fire him without a dime. They blamed pilot error to avoid a billion-dollar lawsuit against the engine manufacturer. Elias didn't fight back. He was a man of the sky, not a man of the courtroom. He returned to his father's old crop-dusting hangar in Willow Creek. For 15 years, he lived in a small room at the back of the hangar. He spent his days fixing old tractors and his nights looking at the stars. He became the town's nobody. He watched the children grow up, including a young orphaned boy named Charlie, who used to sit outside the hangar fence every single day. Charlie didn't have parents or money, but he had a dream. Elias saw himself in the boy. He spent years teaching Charlie the physics of flight, using paper planes and old manuals. He told the boy, "Charlie, a pilot doesn't fly with his hands, he flies with his heart. Never let the ground tell you where the ceiling is." By 2026, Willow Creek was being swallowed by a tech giant called Nova Aero. They were building a massive autonomous flight center. They wanted to remove every human pilot from the sky and replace them with AI and drones. To them, Elias's hangar was an obstacle to progress. The CEO of Nova Aero, a man named Julian Vane, was the son of the very airline executive who had fired Elias 15 years ago. Vane wanted to erase Elias's name from the history books forever. He bought the land under the hangar and sent a demolition crew. He told Elias, "The age of heroes is over, old man. Technology is the new captain. You're just a ghost in a machine that doesn't need you anymore." Monday morning arrived with the sound of heavy machinery. The whole town gathered to watch the end of an era. Elias sat on a wooden crate in front of his hangar, his old captain's hat resting on his lap. He looked at the bulldozer and then at the sky. He told the foreman, "You can tear down the walls, but you can't kill the wind." Julian Vane stood there, laughing, holding a gold-plated shovel. He ordered the bulldozer to move forward. The giant metal blade touched the wooden doors of the hangar, the doors that held 40 years of history. The townspeople looked away, unable to watch. But then, a sound started to grow from the horizon. It wasn't the sound of a drone. It was a deep, chest-thumping thunder that made the ground shake. A sleek, black stealth aircraft, the X-9 Phantom, suddenly dropped from the clouds, screaming across the airfield at Mach 2. It performed a perfect vertical climb, a maneuver that only the best pilots in the world could pull off. The shock wave was so powerful it cracked the windows of Julian Vane's luxury SUV. The jet looped back and landed on the tiny, cracked runway with a grace that seemed impossible. The engines hummed as a canopy slid open. A man stepped out, wearing a high-tech flight suit. He didn't look like a businessman. He looked like a warrior. He walked past the bulldozer, past the police, and straight to the old man in the greasy hat. The pilot took off his helmet. It was Charlie. But he wasn't a scared orphan anymore. He was Colonel Charlie Falcon Ross, the chief test pilot for the United States Air Force. The silence was absolute. Charlie stood at attention and gave Elias a crisp military salute. "Captain Thorne," Charlie said, his voice echoing with pride. "The National Flight Safety Board has finished its secret reinvestigation of Flight 402. They found the original black box data that Nova Aero's father tried to hide. You didn't just save 300 lives, you discovered a fatal flaw that has saved thousands more since." Charlie turned to Julian Vane, who was now trembling. "Mr. Vane, as of this morning, the Department of Defense has seized this airfield under the National Security Act. This is now the Thorne Academy of Elite Aviation. Your drones are grounded, your contracts are canceled, and your father is currently being questioned by the FBI for evidence tampering." Charlie handed Elias a small velvet box. Inside were the golden wings, the highest honor a civilian pilot could receive. "It's time to stop cleaning oil, Ace. We have a new generation of pilots who need to learn how to fly with their hearts." The old Ace's hangar sign has been restored and hangs proudly over the entrance. The world told Elias Thorne that he was a failure because he didn't follow a manual. They told him that technology was more important than the human soul, but they forgot that a machine can fly, but only a human can soar. Julian Vane thought he could bulldoze a nobody, but he ended up destroying his own father's legacy. Elias, who had nothing, ended up saving the future of aviation. Remember, your worth isn't defined by the papers they take away from you. It's defined by the seeds of wisdom you plant in the hearts of others. Elias didn't just teach a boy how to fly paper planes. He built a wingman who would eventually save him from the storm. If this story reminded you that true heroes are never really grounded, type SOAR in the comments and share this to honor those who keep our skies safe.